what you'll learn with this session, whether you know this or not, is what a skill is, how it's different from a prompt or an MCP, because as I've talked to folks, a lot of folks get really confused about all the differences, and that makes total sense because it all feels different in all the tools. We'll go through Claude and ChatGPT and exactly how to simply do things with skills. There's an entire open spec behind skills, so I want to talk about that a little bit just so that everyone understands what's going on there and where they came from. Then, like I said, we'll figure out how to turn on a built-in skill in Claude, also in ChatGPT, in under a minute, and then how to install a skill someone else built and use it, because that's also a fun thing to do. So that's on the slightly little more advanced side. I'm just going to start with the basics, what a skill actually is. So my explanation of what a skill is that it's essentially saved instructions. And basically, with at least the agent skills open standard that exists, it's basically a folder with a file, a name, a description, and your instructions. That's kind of the simplest basic form of it. And so it's written instructions that AI can use is a really good way to say it. And one of the biggest values of it is you can write it once or have it written once by AI, which is, again, a little more advanced thing. And then you can make it so that you don't have to keep re-explaining the task and exactly how to do it to the AI. Because we all know the AI can slip up even when you say the same thing in the same exact way 2 times to the AI. It's going to give you slightly or sometimes wildly different results. And then, of course, whichever AI you use, they have slightly different, if not varying ways to give you the outputs and what they say. So these instructions help sort of steer it is kind of important. So this part is fun, and this is probably one of my favorite parts of skills, but it's basically an agent knows how to use a skill because it reads the name and description at first. So it kind of knows, okay, this is what the skill's about. And then when your task matches, it loads the full instructions. And then it tries to follow them and it tries to run any code or files that might be included with the skill. So a lot of this has to do with how you describe the skill. And there are some other variables and things like that that are more advanced, but I just wanted to give a sort of quick summary of what a skill is and how it kind of works without getting super deep in the weeds of it, although you can see some of the weeds here with these optional fields and things like that. But the short story here is when a skill is formatted right, it works correctly. That's why it is somewhat important to kind of find and pick kind of skills that feel like they're described well and things like that. But that's not the biggest deal because you can easily just take a skill and try it. So I think this is one of those things where you can do trial and error with a bunch of skills and kind of see kind of how it works for you. But one of the biggest things to know is these skills are meant to be almost automatically invoked based on what you said in the chat. That's the intention, just to make that very clear. There's also been some scenarios where Claude and I think even ChatGPT have introduced skills. I think recently Claude introduced like a workflow feature that's essentially a skill and stuff like that. And they made it so every time someone said workflow, it tried to invoke the skill. So then they had to go in and kind of rewrite that a little bit and fix that. So if Anthropic, makers of Claude, are still learning this stuff, you all folks that are here are super early in all of this because we're all learning together. So you're probably wondering, okay, how do I enable this thing called a skill? So I'm going to go through that first. So first thing to do is essentially find a skill you want to install. This one is a skill I found on GitHub. It's actually called Front-End Design by Anthropic, and that's the skill. And I'm just going to show you really quickly for this type of skill how to install it, because this is kind of, let's say, a more advanced sort of version of installing it because you're finding it on GitHub. You're not like finding it in sort of some of the marketplaces that these products have. But I'll explain that as well. So let's say you find some skill somewhere. You would kind of go into Claude. You'll see on the sidebar, doesn't say skills. Okay, cool. So then you go to customize, and they've changed this a few times. So I'm sure by the next time I do this, they're going to change it again. I hope not, though. But you go into the sidebar, hit customize, and then you'll kind of see this thing with skills and connectors. You can hit the plus there, and then you would upload the skill, right? And that skill on GitHub, I'll explain how to get it in a format where you can upload it. But that's how you do a custom skill you might have found out there in the world. I wanted to start with this because this will kind of help you kind of understand like how the skills works. They're just a bunch of files that you're giving the AI that the AI can now use for things you want it to do. That's why it's instructions. So this specific skill that I mentioned, the front end design one, is actually an Anthropic skill. So it is actually in the sort of skills marketplace or directory or whatever they're calling it now. And you can just select it from there. You'll get a preview of it. You can even see like the text and the code or whatever. And then basically you can select it and kind of use it. So if, I know someone just mentioned, I'm not supposed to look in the chat, but I just looked in the chat, but Tyson just mentioned, can skills be malicious? Should I be worried about installing random skills? Yes, absolutely, you should be. But you can essentially even upload the skill in a normal chat with the file and be like, don't use this skill, scan it, and things like that. That's kind of the latest and greatest that a lot of people are doing, but it's a very good question. You should be worried. And there's also skills that help you assess skills and from a security standpoint and things like that. So yeah, random skills, you want to be careful, but usually if you're in a GitHub repo, you can check the person and all this stuff. You're generally okay. I tend to YOLO the skills and make sure I'm also running security checks on them, but I also have lots of sandbox things running around. So I'm not worried about what might happen for me. But if you're concerned about this, give the skill to the AI and ask the AI if it's safe, and you're going to get a pretty good answer at least 90+% of the time. All right. So I was mentioning like you found a skill somewhere else, hopefully on GitHub. But what you would do here is there's a download button on the top right below history. You can see that like arrow down. You would take that, download the zip, and then you have the skill. And then you can upload it. So that's how you do it if you're going to take a skill from somewhere and upload it. That being said, if you're worried about any of this, you should just use the skills or just nervous about it. Just start with the skills that are available in the directories. Those are all obviously all safe because Anthropic or the folks at OpenAI have vetted them and put them there. And a lot of times they've just built them. So if you want to be even extra careful for whatever reason, just use the ones that are built by them to start. Although the power is in the ones that are not built by them, but that's a longer story. And also even creating them yourself. But I'll be talking about that next time. So I mentioned that I wanted to show ChatGPT as well because both tools have skills. A few other tools have skills as well, but these are the two obviously most popular tools today. You would look on the bottom left and they actually don't say customize or anything. In their case, they say skills. So then you would click that. And then basically, if you wanted to upload one, you go to new skill and you'd be able to upload one. And in their case, at least when we were doing this in the screenshots, they don't have a directory like this last I checked, as I mentioned, but they might, and I haven't sort of played with that because usually for my work, I'm essentially using my own skills versus other people's, or again, more advanced, a modification of an existing skill, which is where things start getting really fun. Okay, so you're probably wondering, okay, what are Heaton's favorite skills, or what skills do I recommend? So this is kind of like the final section before the Q&A, so get your questions ready. I know some folks have already been putting them in there, but the idea here is that we are basically going to find skills, or I'm going to share some skills that are some of my favorites that I am literally using every day, if not every other day. So this is a prototype skill. A gentleman named Matt built the skill, and he has a whole bunch of other skills, but this one is literally my favorite skill out of all his skills. So with this one, like, it will essentially build you some kind of prototype or quick UI mockup, or even like a runnable logic demo to explain how you're doing something. And if you think about this pre-AI, we would have like mockups or prototypes or things like that built by engineers and stuff like that. And folks like me that are not engineers, but I fake it. I used to be able to out Google the engineers. That's what I like to say now. It doesn't even matter. But basically, I can out AI them most of the time, though. Anyway, so basically, this helps you get, with just this skill, a prototype of anything you're trying to do. And that's really like an amazing experience when you think about what that really means, because that means that you can actually touch and feel, so to speak, whatever you're building with just this one skill. And you can read all about it and all that. You would probably just type in Matt Pocock and prototype and be able to find the skill. Okay, so this one is, I want to almost say this is not even almost, this is the most underrated skill on the planet. That's how I feel. It only had like 300 likes or something, barely, when I got it. It's built by a friend of mine. His name is Saleo. He actually texted me the skill before he kind of really talked about it. He's even got an entire video about luck. It is awesome because you can just take it and say, just throw some luck at it or give me some luck or something like that on anything you're doing. And it will just take it and give you a perspective that you definitely did not have on what you're doing or most likely did not have. So everyone here should go find this skill. It's on GitHub. It's by Soleo. You can trust it. I'd vouch for him and it as long as you're using the right one. If you need to, yeah, there you go. Harry linked it in the chat, but it is the most underrated. Yeah, only 138. I was wrong. I thought it had like 300. I was reading the three. Um, so yeah, it's a really dope skill. It is a little more esoteric in some ways, but what I mean by that is like you won't necessarily understand the skill if you read it, but if you apply the skill, you're going to find a ton of value in using it. I would just try it. It's like a skill that's hyper strategic, I would say, and it really helps you with strategy on whatever you're doing. Like I throw it at designs, I throw it at ideas, and it just gives me a different perspective that's very hard to get any other way, including with my own brain. And I love stuff like this. So it's the most underrated skill. I could talk about it for like a bit. That's how good it is. But I'm biased because Soleo is one of the best product people and designers on the planet, in my opinion. So it's really cool that he made a skill that was completely unrelated to any of that stuff, but yet exactly related to all that stuff. And then finally, this is a skill I use every time I build skills. And if you kind of came here from X, I guess we call it Twitter, I guess. You probably saw the article I wrote about skill libraries and stuff like that for companies. And I talk about like how you need to take the expertise in a company and sort of create the skill. This is like your 101 basic way to kind of create a skill is using Anthropic Skill Creator. So if you want to create skills from things, this is kind of one way to do it. I wanted to mention the skill because next time we're going to dive deeper into how to create skills and things like that. This is one of the ways to do it. There's a whole bunch of other ways to do it too, which we'll talk about. But the idea here is the skill builds other skills. You give it a task and then it will be able to let you create the skill and make the skill for you. And then you can repeat whatever you were doing. And there's so many different ways to use this, but this is one of the ways that I not only like make my own skills, but I will even take a skill, use it in a conversation, then throw the skill creator at it. And usually it has all the context of the skill that I used and all the new stuff that I gave it. And the skill is better for my use cases. So it's these kind of things that are kind of more advanced and that I highly recommend that folks do. But I wanted to start with kind of what I did today so that everyone can kind of be leveled up on a certain level around these skills. And then, today, what can you do? Well, if you haven't done it yet, you should go look at Anthropic Skill Library. You will probably find at least 5 that are interesting enough for you to use. You don't need to go to GitHub or any of that stuff. Just go there, check it out. There's going to be ones that are going to help you with your work. And so that's one thing you can do. And if you just did that, that's a win for today if you haven't done that before. If you've done it before and you haven't looked in that sort of marketplace or directory before, maybe you should, because you will kind of get a refresher because they keep adding more skills and stuff. And I know now like there's plugins and all these other things. So, but skills are basically the core and where everything started. Plugins let you use skills, but that's for another day. And then you can download the skills that I shared today. If you ask me which one you should download, you should play with Luck because Luck is super underrated. I know I've already ranted on it, and I think it is just a wildly useful one that is like no other skill on the planet today. And that's probably why I would say that's a fun one to play with if you're willing to download one and install it. And then, of course, start using the damn skills.